150 program. So today we'll talk about what is building communities through arts and heritage, which we also call BCAH, our deadlines, understanding program guidelines, completing an application, the Canada 150 Fund, and then I'll turn it back over to Heather for some question and answer period. Firstly, I do a lot of these training programs, and what I like to ask people when I first come is, what do you think of when you hear building communities through arts and heritage? What does this mean to you? The typical answers that I get are what I've put in this word cloud here: community, local, engagement, volunteers, heritage, festivals, artisans. And our program went through a renewal process a few years ago, and these are the words that really resonated with me as well. So it's great to see that our clients have the same vision that we do. What we look for in the program are festivals and events that have a primary focus of arts and heritage. The official objective of the program is to engage citizens in their local communities through performing and visual arts, as well as through the expression, celebration, and preservation of local historical heritage. We deliver our funds through both grants and contributions, the difference being that grants are usually awarded for amounts under $50,000, and there's a very simple process where you sign a liability waiver and receive the funds, whereas a contribution is a little more complicated. It involves a longer legal document, and you will receive the funding in installments based on reporting. We also have three components in the BCAH program: the festivals component, the anniversaries component, and the legacy component, and I will go through each of these. This program is very competitive, and we receive a lot of applications every year. So this is just a bit of a warning that it is a very competitive program. We do not have a guarantee of funding from year to year. So even if you have received funding in the past, all applications are looked at brand new again at every application deadline. And all applications are evaluated every year despite previous funding. All of our guidelines and application forms are available online. Although we are moving toward an online model where you actually apply online, right now we have forms that you have to complete either in a PDF form or actually print and complete, and then you can send them in through email, or a printed version can be sent in. The first component I'd like to talk about is the local festivals component. I'd also like to bring your attention to the picture on the slide, and all of the pictures on the slides are actually from events that we funded in the past that we visited through site visits, which is something that we do to go out into the communities and see what people are doing and check out the festivals and events that we're funding. So for the local festivals component, again, we have a primary focus on arts and heritage content, and this component provides funding for groups who are presenting recurring festivals that present the work of local artists, artisans, and heritage performers. For eligibility for local festivals, you must be a local, nonprofit, incorporated, or unincorporated organization, or you can be a local band council, tribal council, or other Aboriginal government. We do not fund any other level of government in this component, and unfortunately this means that most business improvement areas are also not eligible. However, one of our eligibility requirements is that you have confirmed municipal support, either cash or in kind, and the BIAs would then be eligible to provide this support for your programming. We can fund up to $200,000 of eligible expenses in this program, in this component, local festivals. However, as I said, the program is very competitive, and it's very unlikely that you would see this high level of funding. Normally, applicants receive a portion of what they request from the program. Festivals must be between more than one day, but less than 28 consecutive days, and they must be organized locally and actively involve members of the community. We assess this by looking at the volunteers that you have and what they're doing for the festival, as well as your local partners and how they're supporting the festival, either cash or in kind. Festivals must be intended for the general public and be barrier-free and easily accessed. When we're talking about easily accessible festivals, we're looking at both the physical accessibility in terms of, for example, are they wheelchair accessible? We're also looking at the accessibility for people in terms of getting in. So how much does the festival cost? Generally, our applicants have very, very low or no admissions. Festivals that have higher admissions or strictly ticketed events usually are not assessed as highly. It's really important that you present the work of local artists, artisans, and heritage performers. This is the main aspect that we look at. So how are you involving and featuring and presenting these local artists? It's okay if you do have non-local artists. However, those would not be eligible for funding. Some of the eligible expenses that we can look at are for volunteers, promotion for the local community, local artists' fees and expenses, as well as some production costs, such as stage rental. And if you see the picture on this slide, it is showing that the stage has been rented. The reason that we will fund rentals of stages, tents, tables, chairs, anything like that that you need is because we do not fund capital assets. So we don't fund anything that you would gain from. We don't fund you buying your own stage or your own sound equipment, for example, but anything that you rent is fine. Importantly, we do not fund anything competitive, recreational, commercial, or fundraising. In particular, I'd like to draw your attention to the commercial component. So although you may have vendors, for example, food trucks or artisans, local artisans selling their wares, this cannot be a primary component. So if you have a large music festival that's free to the public and everyone's allowed to attend and you may have a few vendors, that's okay. But if you have, for example, an art in the park where the primary purpose is for artisans to sell their wares, this would not be an eligible festival overall. We also do not fund salaries or operating costs. And you can see on our budget, I'll bring up the budget now just to show you. These grayed out lines here, that means that you cannot request funds for them. So for example, under production or event venues, security, you'll see that it's grayed out here or greened out. And that means that we will not fund that. So although you can put in how much it costs, you cannot request funding for it. So the budget is pretty user-friendly in that you cannot request funds for things that are not eligible. Okay, moving on. The next component I'd like to talk about is the community anniversaries component. Again, this is a picture from one of our 1812 clients when we were commemorating. Okay, so the slide should be up now. Okay, so this is from one of our War of 1812 anniversary clients, and those were a lot of fun. Community anniversaries must commemorate a significant local historical event or personality and mark a 100th anniversary or greater in increments of 25. So 100 years, 125 years, 150 years, etc. We don't see many over 200 at this part of the country, and that's fine, but we do see a lot of anniversaries for 100 or 125 years. To be eligible for the community anniversaries component, again, you must be a local nonprofit, incorporated or unincorporated organization, a local band council, tribal council, or other Aboriginal government. And for the community anniversaries component, municipal governments can apply. So this would include the municipality, arts councils that are part of the municipality, BIAs would then be eligible to apply for this component. This component will fund up to $200,000 for non-recurring events. So that's a one-time event that takes place in the calendar year of the anniversary, which again mark a 100th anniversary or greater, are organized locally, again intended for the general public and easily accessible by the same standards as the festivals, present local artists, artisans, and heritage performers, and demonstrate a clear link with the anniversary. I can give a few examples for this one, which might make it easier. An example of a local personality that might be commemorated would be, for example, the first mayor of the town, or the person who, in fact, founded that town. So in 1825, John Smith came to this town and founded it, and now you'd like to commemorate the 100th anniversary of either him arriving there or actually incorporating the town. We also get some applications for important buildings, for example, the first post office in the town or the flour mill that was in the town, because if it weren't for that, then people never would have come to the area and it never would have been a town in the first place. But you really do need to demonstrate the importance of this person or event to the community. We look at letters of support as well as the involvement of the community in order to determine how significant this event is to that community. These events can be between 1 day and 1 calendar year. They also must demonstrate in-kind and organizational support from the community and written confirmation from the municipality of support if the applicant is not the municipality. In terms of both community anniversaries and local festivals applicants, the way that applications are assessed, we look at how the festival engages the community, how the festival features the local arts and heritage as the primary component, how the festival increases exposure of the local arts and heritage in the community, and your ability as the applicant to manage the event as proposed. All applicants who meet the eligibility criteria and pass the assessment will receive funding. Again, this is why applicants normally don't receive the full request amount, is because we don't rank them. They're just, if you are eligible and you pass assessment, you will receive something. Festivals and anniversaries are not evaluated against each other, but they are evaluated against those in the same component. So festivals are evaluated against festivals and anniversaries are evaluated against anniversaries. Normally we look at festivals in terms of the type of festival and where it's located. So if you're a small town in Northern Ontario, you won't necessarily be assessed against a large festival in the GTA. We will look at websites, media coverage, and other public documents to inform our decisions for especially the applicant, looking at whether or not you've done other events in the past. The last component of this program is called the Legacy Fund. The Legacy Fund is for large capital projects, and it's actually administered through our national headquarters, which means I don't actually work on this program because I work in our regional office in Toronto. So I'll give you a brief overview, and if you did have any questions about this, I would encourage you to contact our colleagues that work in the Legacy Fund in Ottawa. Legacy Fund provides funding for community capital projects that commemorate a local historical anniversary of 100 years or greater in increments of 25, just like the anniversaries component. Large capital components mean we will fund up to 50% of eligible expenses to a maximum of $500,000, which tells you that these are pretty large projects. I'll also note that in the community anniversaries component, we can fund small capital projects up to $25,000. So if you have an anniversary application and you know you also want to do a large capital project, you could additionally apply to the Legacy Fund. You do not need to receive community anniversaries funding in order to be eligible for Legacy Fund, and vice versa. The same eligibility rules for applicants apply in Legacy Fund, in that you must be a local nonprofit or incorporated or unincorporated organization, or a local band council, tribal council, or Aboriginal government. And again, municipal governments are eligible to apply for Legacy Fund. Expenses that are not eligible under Legacy Fund are operating and salaries, archaeological digs, public works infrastructures, and the purchase of commission of items for sale. Coming up on your screen, you'll see a chart which will help you navigate the 3 components and which one you should apply to. So as you can see, again, the festivals are recurring events that you must have done at least once in order to apply the program. So if you're having a first-time event, it's not eligible for funding under festivals. So again, you must have done the festival at least once in order to apply. For non-recurring anniversaries, if you're having an actual anniversary celebration with or without a minor capital project, you apply to the anniversaries component. And if it's just a large-scale capital project, you'll be applying to the legacy fund. Oops. So now we'll talk about the application deadlines. We have 3 deadlines. They'll be coming up on your screen shortly. We have 3 deadlines for local festivals. The first deadline is January 31st, and that is for festivals occurring between September and December. The next deadline of the same year, sorry. The next deadline is April 30th, and that is for festivals occurring in, January to June of the next calendar year. And September 30th is for festivals occurring in July and August of the next calendar year. Community anniversaries have one funding deadline, and that's the January 31st deadline. You have to apply a year in advance for community anniversaries. So for example, if you have an anniversary occurring in 2016, you have missed the deadline. If you have an anniversary occurring in 2017, your deadline will be January 31st, 2016. The Legacy Fund is open. There is no fixed deadline. The only rule is that you must apply before the date of the anniversary. We cannot fund expenses incurred before the deadline dates, and absolutely no late applications are accepted. Next, I'd like to just talk about what makes a successful event. I really like this picture. Hopefully it's up on your screen now. It's of a festival map that this applicant made to show people where to go. And it's just really nice because you can see that it's handmade, it's a community project, and they really went above and beyond to show people where they can go. This was posted all over the festival grounds. So we have a lot of primarily arts and heritage festivals. Usually these are music festivals or dance festivals. A lot of times they are multidisciplinary. So we'll have music, dance, theater, artist interaction. Sometimes there are community projects that you can take part in, like a large mural. Often there are workshops. So an artist will have a workshop on painting or singing or songwriting. And sometimes there are children's areas. Children's areas are great, and we always love to see local artists involved in the children's area. So children having workshops, or you have specific local children's entertainment. Things like midway rides and bouncy castles, these aren't eligible under the program, but anything having to do with local arts would be eligible. So next, I'll talk about my keys to success for festivals and events under the program. Firstly, again, that community engagement, it keeps coming up. We want to see the volunteers. Many of the organizations that apply to us are actually entirely volunteer run. They don't have a paid staff. You can have a paid staff, but what we're looking for is that community and volunteer involvement. Again, the local artists, artisans, and heritage performers. How many do you have? What are they doing? What are they doing in comparison to A, non-local artists, and B, non-primarily arts and heritage activities? So again, how many local artists do you have compared to how many food vendors do you have? Again, those volunteers, they keep coming up. What are they doing? We actually ask you in the application to talk about how the volunteers plan, manage, implement, and evaluate the festival. Local partners is always great. We'd like to see local partners providing support in kind, which could be, for example, food and water for volunteers, or it could be a strictly cash donation. We look at your promotion to see how is your event promoted, firstly in the local community. So is it in the local papers, TV, radio? What partners have let you advertise on their website? We also look at social media. So how are you reaching a broader audience through things like social media or e-blast and the internet? Accessibility, again, is a really big component that we look at, so keeping in mind that physical accessibility as well as affordability and inclusivity of your audience. Then on the applicant side, we look at the management. How successfully have you managed similar events in the past? How long has this particular festival been going on? And reasonability. So we look at the reasonability of what you did in previous years compared to what you're proposing this year, especially the budget. How much is the budget changing? What's your capacity in terms of presenting a much larger festival, for example? Most festivals who do well for the management and reasonability do very similar activities each year with a similar budget. I'd also like to encourage you to call us before applying. It's really important that you talk to somebody, and if you have any questions, we are there to help. We spend a lot of time on the phone and on email with applicants, particularly leading up to the deadlines. And we're there, so we'd love for you to call us. Next, I'd like to talk a little bit about program guidelines. So maybe at this point, and how to understand them. At this point, I'd like to show you our website and just how to get to our festivals page from the website. Okay, so you should be seeing the home page now for Canadian Heritage. You'll see the web address is pch.gc.ca, and you're invited to choose the language of your choice. I'll do this in English. And that will take you into our homepage. I find the easiest way to look up programs is actually to go right here on the left-hand side where it says funding. And under there you'll see a list of programs A to Z. Click that. This is the easiest way to find the programs. And here you'll find an entire list of our programs in alphabetical order. And there's building communities through arts and heritage. I think I have it open already. No. So you choose the one you want. It's actually, we have anniversaries, festivals, and legacy fund there. Apply for funding, and that will take you to the Building Communities Through Arts and Heritage webpage. Here you can get all the information on the deadlines, eligibility for who can apply, and our guidelines, which are really important also. I encourage you to read guidelines anytime you're going to apply for a program, as well as our application form and budget. These are all in PDF versions. If you're unable to use them, we do have other versions available, but you'll have to contact us when you're applying. From that page, you can click on Guidelines, which will take you into a PDF version of our guidelines. This is the Festivals guideline. Festivals, Anniversaries, and Legacy component all have their own guidelines. The table of contents will show you quite clearly where things are within the guidelines, including eligible applicants, eligible expenses, as well as how applications are evaluated. So everything I've already said today is actually contained in these guidelines, and you can take a look at those at any time. Okay, so now what I'd like to talk about is understanding the guidelines. It can be really frustrating when you're trying to apply for a program and you don't understand what the guidelines are saying, or you simply don't read them. So again, I encourage you to read the guidelines and don't be scared of missing anything, because again, we're on the phone waiting to talk to you. Okay, so my tips and tricks for applicants. Please read the guidelines before applying and try to see what elements seem prominent in the guidelines. So, for example, in the festival's guidelines, we continue to talk about community engagement and local artists. So if your festival doesn't seem to have a lot of that, it's probably not a good fit. But on the other hand, if you do have a lot of that, you're probably a good fit. So make sure you meet the eligibility criteria as well, both of the applicant and of the festival. Sometimes you might be eligible as an applicant, but the festival isn't eligible. So for example, if you're only a one-day festival, you would not be eligible for our program. Make sure you meet the deadlines. There's nothing worse than filling out the entire application and sending it in only to learn that you missed the deadline or you're applying to the wrong deadline. There is a lot of energy and time that is spent in these applications, and we want to make sure that you're meeting the right deadline. Know if the deadlines are hard or if they're open. So for example, for legacy component, you can kind of pick and choose a little bit when you want to put your application in, whereas for festivals and anniversaries, you must meet those deadlines. Also find out what is the criteria for sending in your application by the deadline. So if you're allowed to email it, what is the last possible time you can email it? Or if you're mailing it, what must the postage mark say? Or when must the office receive it in order to be eligible? Different programs also have different deadlines. So for example, BCAH has 3 deadlines and MAP only has 1. MAP is the Museums Assistance Program. So again, just make sure that even if you've applied to other programs in the past, you're hitting the right deadline for the right program. Again, if you still have questions, give us a call. We're here to help. So here's a specific example that I like to use that I touched on a little bit already. So again, the main things that we're looking for in the Building Communities program is local artists, community engagement, and accessibility. So make sure you understand what this all means, and then make sure that you really talk to that in your application. So not only that the festival or the anniversary contains these aspects, but also that you really identify them in the application and how you're meeting these criteria. Next, you want to complete the application form. So again, our forms, you can find them online and they're in PDF format. They often have, as you can see on the screen, these red highlighted boxes or an asterisk to let you know where the mandatory information is. And remember that you need to submit a complete application. For our program, and our program only, if you submit an incomplete application, but the main elements are there, we may come back to you and ask for the required information. For example, if you completed your application form and sent it in, but you forgot to send in the municipal support form, we will contact you and give you, say, 5 days to send in that municipal form. I do encourage you to send a complete application in the beginning. However, if you send in an incomplete application, it will not immediately be thrown out. There is a line in the guidelines that say incomplete applications may not be evaluated. If you're having trouble with the online forms and you can't get a hold of anybody, what I would suggest doing is working in a Word document to make sure you can save all of your information, and then when you get technical support, you can transfer your information into the correct forms. My other advice for completing application forms is please ensure you're answering the right questions. Sometimes questions seem redundant, but if you read carefully and closely, you'll find the information that we're really looking for. I also encourage you to read the question carefully and then highlight, circle, put your cursor over, whatever it is you need to do to pick out those keywords from the questions and really speak to those keywords in your answer so that you're showing and identifying how your festival or event meets those key points. This question, for example, says include the details. It might be difficult to see because this is a screenshot, but it says include the details concerning all of the following items. So if that were me, I would circle the word all, and I would speak to every one of those bullet points because there's a reason that we're asking you to answer all of those items. If you don't, we may come back and ask you, okay, you didn't talk about venue choices, for example. Please tell us about your venue choices. You may leave something out because you think it's irrelevant or it doesn't apply to you. If you get a question like this, I would encourage you to write that in. So, for example, when venue choices, if you're having your festival in a park, you may think that doesn't apply to you, but we do encourage you to say the festival occurs in a park and the municipality lets us use that space. That's really important information for us. So please remember to read the questions, highlight the key points, and answer those key points. Next is the budget forms, which we talked about a little bit earlier, and how if it's not an eligible expense, our budget form actually won't let you request the funding. Our budget forms are cash only, although in other parts of the application we ask you to talk about in-kind expenses. Our budget forms are actually cash only. Some line items may not be parallel to what you have either in your financial statements or other budget forms you've completed, but I do encourage you to try and make it work and to sort of filter out your line items so that they match up with ours, but also match up with other budgets that you've completed. We do ask you for your financial statements in the application, and we will look through those and make sure that overall the budget matches what you have in your financial statements. Whether your organization only presents this event or whether they present many events throughout the year, we do like to look at those and make sure that they look the same. Again, call an agent if the form's not working properly. For example, if it's not adding correctly, you should call somebody and make sure that you're using the correct form. So finally, you've filled out the application, you've filled out the budget, you've read the guidelines, you think you're a great fit. Are you done yet? The answer is no. I would suggest most application forms that I've seen lately have a checklist, which I'm now showing on the screen. This checklist is so handy, and I really encourage you to use it. It tells you everything that has to be in the application package so that you can ensure on your end you have a complete application. The first part is for all applicants. So this is all the parts of the application, including the form, the budget, brochures from the previous edition, and parts A to F, which include the municipal support form, the unincorporated liability form, if that applies to you as an unincorporated group, and a few other forms that we ask you to fill out. Then you have two sections, one for incorporated applicants and one for unincorporated applicants. Depending on what your organization is, you'll want to make sure you have all of these included. This could be the organization's letters patent, bylaws, 2 most recent financial statements, and a list of your board of directors. These are all really important components that go toward a complete application. You'll also notice at the bottom of this checklist that you have to sign and date the checklist. I have noticed since we've required a signature and a date, we have so many more complete applications. So I really encourage you to use this checklist not only so that we can receive a complete application, but so that you can rest assured that you have sent in a complete application. Some of our other programs that are available are the Canada Arts Presentation Fund, which also funds festivals and series programming. Canada Cultural Spaces Fund, which is for infrastructure and feasibility studies. Museums Assistance Program, which supports heritage institutions and museums, as well as the Official Languages Support Programs. which helps to strengthen the cultural, artistic, and heritage actions of official language minority communities. Finally, I'd like to touch on the Canada 150 Fund, which I mentioned before. This is a brand new fund that was introduced just in April, and you won't find the guidelines and application forms on the website. We do ask you to call a regional office, whatever your region is. In this case, it's Ontario. There are 3 objectives. I'll touch on 2 of them. The first one is that applies sort of in conjunction with building communities, as well as the Canada Arts Presentation Fund, is community and festival events. Now, these are different than what we fund in BCAH and Canada Arts Presentation Fund. If you are presenting a regular festival that's been funded through BCAH or CAPF, the Canada Arts Presentation Fund, we will ask you to continue to apply through those programs. If you are throwing a one-time standalone community event, you may be eligible for the Canada 150 funding. Now, also, if you are a regular BCAH or CAPF client, but you'd like to add on some ancillary events for Canada 150, we will ask you still to apply to BCAH or CAPF, but noting the extra events that you're going to have, and those will be considered within our guidelines rather than 150. So I'll show you one last website. Oops. This is the Canada 150 website, and the website address is simply www.canada150, that's 150.gc.ca. Again, we'll go through the English stream. This is the home page, and if you just scroll down to funding program, it will show you Canada 150 program. And here you can find some useful information on eligibility, application deadlines, and at the bottom is how you contact. So you can contact, this is the main line, the first one, or you can go down to Ontario and contact us right in the Toronto Regional Office. Signature Events is the other initiative I'll talk about, and that is for very large-scale, national in-scope events. There will be very, very limited funding for these events, and probably only a few will be chosen. So this may not be something that applies to you, but if it does, there is a deadline for that. An expression of interest must be submitted by May 29th, 2015. So that's something to think about if you think you have a very large national in scope event commemorating Canada 150. I encourage you to get in touch with our office immediately since the deadline is coming up. Otherwise, please take a look at this website and get in touch with our office so that you can obtain the guidelines and application forms if you think you might like to do a community event. There is a 1-866 number there, as well as our website again, if you have any other questions. I think Heather will send out my details. If anybody has any questions specifically about building communities, please feel free to call me. I'd love to hear from you. And I think that wraps it up for me for today. That's the Building Communities Through Arts and Heritage program in a small nutshell. And I'd love to hear from you if you have questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Lauren. That was great. So this is our question period. So if you have any questions from throughout the presentation that we just listened to, then please send them in. So to get started, I'll just ask Lauren, what research is required for commemoration festivals, i.e. with a festival that would have, celebrating a founder? Would the applicant need to provide, primary resources, or is something like just an oral history from the town acceptable?
That's a great question, Heather. Thank you for touching on that. Something that we do ask you to provide for community anniversaries is proof of the anniversary. So there's several ways that we can do this. Since anniversaries are very old in nature, often if it's, for example, a town, we'll ask for incorporation documents or something like that that shows the date. But as we realize that especially with older communities that have over 200 years for the anniversary, we would ask that anything from a published source could be accepted. So if there was a book written saying that the town was founded, or this is the date that the person came to the area, or we had a great one actually. There was a shipwreck in the Great Lakes. So that was really well publicized through news reports and media, as well as published books that were written about it. So anything that was published that could be proof of the anniversary, we will accept. We do realize that it's difficult, and this is something that we really work with applicants on. Some are really easy; they have the background and they have the proof ready. Others, it's really difficult to find, and we'll work with you to find that. Sometimes you can even find it online, some sort of historical designation might be available online, whereas you don't necessarily have that in your records. So we'll work with you to find that, but that is a requirement, the proof of anniversary.
Okay, thank you. So our next question is coming from Madeline Smorlars, and she asks, what kind of support is available to applicants during the application process? And are there different resources available to help different museums, e.g. small, medium, large size?
So I would suggest that as you're going through the application process, you start online doing your research of the funding program that you might want to apply to. Read those guidelines first to find out if you fit, and then if you still have questions, call or email us. In the applications and on the website, the guidelines and on the website, there will be phone numbers and emails both for our regional offices, as well as some of them do just have an actual person that you can reach. And then sometimes it's just easier, especially if you have really specific questions, to talk to someone in person. Funding for museums, I would suggest you look at the Museums Assistance Program, and I can answer specific questions about different types of museums if you want to give me a call at the office later on. In terms of BCAH, sometimes museums are not eligible simply because they are part of the municipality. Some are independent, which is great, and we have funded some independent museums through the program.
All right, so our next question is, can a volunteer group organized only for one, i.e. non-reoccurring event apply? Or is it better for a pre-existing organization, e.g. the local historical society, to make the application?
So if you're a local volunteer group that's doing a one-time thing, so again, festivals must have been done once already, so you would not be eligible for a first-time festival. If you were a volunteer committee who came together and you put a festival on every year, you can certainly apply for festivals. For community anniversaries, volunteer groups can come together just for that one-time community anniversary. The problems that you may run into are, again, when we look at your capacity, for example, so we would need to see what have the members of the group done before, what were their previous job experiences, what events have they organized. In this case, you may want to hook up with a larger organization or an incorporated organization just to make your lives easier. And put on sort of a joint anniversary, but certainly you are eligible to apply, and there's an unincorporated waiver form you just fill out. The other problem is that you must have a bank account in order to receive funding. So, and we do direct deposit, so you actually do need to prove that you have the bank account. So that is sometimes the other snag that all volunteer groups run into, is that they don't actually have a bank account set up, especially for a one-time event, in their name. And we cannot cut the check to anyone else. So in that case, it may also be beneficial for you to either apply with the municipality or a BIA or a local historical society. That's often what volunteer groups do. But again, if you have specific questions, each case is different, and I encourage you to call us about that.
Okay, so I think that's about it for time for questions right now, unless anyone's got a last minute question, but I think we've got them all. All right. So thanks so much, everyone. I'll just go through a bit more information about what you heard today. So you will receive an email within the next week or so with a brief survey that just asks you about your experiences during this webinar. It will also include a PDF of today's slides and some handouts from today's session, as well as information about how to get in contact with Lauren for further questions. The Strengthening Ontario's Heritage Webinar series will resume again this fall, and we'll be providing a new variety of webinars at a wide range of topics for those interested in preserving and promoting Ontario's history. Please check back with us on our website for announcements about the fall schedule, or you can email me at ohs@ontariohistoricalsociety.ca. Just before we finish up, a brief word about our membership. We encourage you to become a member of the OHS if you are not already. The Society offers support and resources for historical groups and institutions, historians, students, and educators, and your support will help both continue to promote the importance of history education in Ontario's classrooms, museums, and heritage spaces. Please visit the OHS website for more information on becoming a member, or contact our membership coordinator, Christina, at the email you can see on your screen. Lastly, I just want to say a very big thank you for Lauren for sharing her time and expertise with us today. We really appreciate all the work she has done for us. I also want to thank the Department of Canadian Heritage for working with us today, and you can visit again their website at the link attached. And just before we end, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who participated in our webinar today. All right, I'll let you then to get on with your afternoon. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.